Hey guys, here's a fun little game I want to share with you that really highlights one particular attacking idea, and it is occupying the 7th rank. If you can get your major pieces, that's your rooks, queen, right, onto the 7th rank. The 7th rank can be a real weakness. Okay, so let me take you through the game. It won't take long. So we are in the Sicilian and the Wing Gambit in the Sicilian. Now here, so my opponent's rated 1274 and it's a 5-minute blitz game, okay? So he's a Sicilian player, doesn't really know how to play against the Wing Gambit, had a bit of a think, plays b6. Okay, so I bring out my knight in normal open Sicilian style, so I might be playing d4 at some point, but particularly if he ever captures on b4. Now the knight comes out, and I decide to push b5 and kick the knight. Right? It's a blitz game. This is all good. And his knight now retreats. Now I play d4 and strike out for the centre. Okay, we have takes and takes. So a normal kind of open Sicilian setup. But look, I've got Barry the b pawn is really starting to make life difficult for this knight. This knight now can't come out. So we have bishop moves to the fianchetto position on b7. Eyeing up this pawn, which is currently undefended. So bishop d3 defends the pawn, and now d6, and now I castle. So I've got a nice, healthy development lead, right? Because he's brought his knight out, and then he's been forced to take it back. I've got 2 pieces out on the board, and I've castled, so that's a score of 4-1 in development. Okay. Now, in this game, I have to say, I don't play particularly brilliantly in the middle game. Now his knight comes out, looking at my pawn on e4. Okay, so what would you play here, right? I play rook e1. Okay, so lots of positives about this. I'm lining up my rook against the king, right? I'm adding a second defender to the pawn that's now attacked twice. Okay, just makes perfect sense, very logical move. Now g6, this is announcing a second fianchetto. So maybe he's a Sicilian dragon player. I now throw out my bishop to g5. And he fianchettos his bishop, and now you've always got to be wary when there's a bishop in a fianchetto position, right, that's looking down at where your rooks might be. So I decide to defend this knight with my pawn, also creates possibilities for my queen coming up here as well. Black castles, and I now develop my knight here, so I'm thinking maybe bring my knight round here, and maybe get this rook off of that a1 square out of... I don't want any ideas of horrible discoveries or double attacks by moving the knight. Now he gets his knight out, but he's having to go the long way around. This is the 3rd move for the knight. Okay, so he's also brought his knight in front of his queen, like I have. And now I play knight f3, and now his knight comes in looking at my light squared bishop. Alright, and it's also a 3rd attacker on this pawn, has to be said. So I now come in with my knight to c6, right? Defended by brave Barry, the b pawn, okay? My knight is attacking the queen, but also the queen's got to defend this pawn here on e7, because if I capture that, that also comes with check. So he's pretty much forced to take off, and Barry recaptures. Now Barry's not going to be long for this world. Okay, he takes my bishop, queen recaptures. Rook across to c8, rook to c1, rook a to c1, getting out of the line of fire of this bishop here. And now Barry falls. Okay, so I'm 1 pawn down at this point. Now, in a minute, I make a blunder. Right, so I play rook e to d1. With ideas of maybe like pushing e5, attack the knight. If pawn takes, that's bad because I take queen, he takes queen, I take rook, I win a rook. Okay, so he spots this and the knight retreats. Now I bring my knight in to attack his rook. Rook retreats. I bring my queen in here, okay, but can you see a tactic now for black, right, that I failed to notice? Black plays rook c5, okay, so he's attacking my queen, but he's also attacking my undefended bishop on g5, right? I move my queen and lose my bishop. I grab a pawn by way of compensation, but I'm I'm a full bishop down now, okay? So in terms of pawn structure, I've got 3 around my king and 3 fairly isolated pawns, right? Black, on the other hand, has 5 and a singleton here, okay? So right now, you've got to fancy Black's position. He's still got 2 minutes 48 on the clock. So he decides to simplify by trading, and I recapture with the C pawn, at least getting a decent kind of control over the center. Now he throws out f4. So I don't know, I guess he's thinking, do you know what, I've got a material advantage now. He's got an extra knight. Let's start to bust things open. However, it has to be said that this rook is now very much compromised because it's not got much scope on the board, okay? So I push e5, thinking he's now opened up his king. Let's see if we can, create more space in the middle of the board and try and somehow salvage the game, okay? So he pushes d5, he doesn't want to trade off. And now rook c7. Okay, now, 2 attackers on the knight. This rook can't come to the defense of the knight, nor can this rook, right? Nor can the king. The knight is going to have to move, but then the pawn behind it is going to fall, okay? So look, I now have 2 major pieces on the 7th rank. Right, so the knight comes out here, grab the pawn, okay? And there's a serious threat here, okay? Now, can you see the attacking idea, right? So, I mean, for example, I could play rook takes h7, okay? But then we've got ideas of, maybe the knight could come in and block, something like that, and block the queen's defense of the rook, stuff like that. But I think actually a better way would be, to finish this, would be rook g7 check, right? King only has 1 legal move, has to go to h8, then rook takes h7, king has to move back here, and then finally queen g7 would be checkmate, okay? This, I don't think, would force checkmate straight away, but then I could take the rook and then he comes back, so maybe, we shall see. Anyway, but he has time to move this awkward rook from g5 to h5 and defend the pawn. So now if I check, king goes here, and then if I take the pawn, rook takes, queen can't recapture, okay? So what do you do? G7 check first of all, king moves, and now rook c1, and I'm preparing to add another major piece onto the 7th rank. Okay, now Black now plays queen to here. I don't quite know what he's thinking, because obviously my king is in some danger of a back rank mate, but after this move, rook c to c7, right? I'm not sure he can stop checkmate at all, right? His extra knight here is useless. Okay, so he plays queen to here, attacking my queen. Maybe he's just trying to trade off, we shall see. But this rook is also in the way, even if even if we trade queens, I've still got rook there. Oh no, then he's still got rook here though. But yeah, when your king only has 2 squares, it is possible for 2 rooks to get into this mating pattern anyway. But it's too late, because rook takes h7, right? King g7, I mean, he could capture with a rook, but it's the same, the outcome is the same. Rook takes there, he's still in check, defended by the queen, has to go there, and then queen g7. Okay, but here, goes to there, and that is simply checkmate. Very, very satisfying finish, forced win, and with all 3 major pieces on my opponent's 7th rank, very, very satisfying. So yeah, just want to bear in mind the 7th rank can be a real vulnerability, particularly where my opponent's pawns are too far forward. If you can get your major pieces in there, go straight for the throat on that king. All right, guys. So I thought you'd enjoy that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.